Dogs in the yard, might need a guard. Every loss, taking to heart. Me first, that cannot be. Must be these underdog episodes, see? Feeling much better, so suddenly. Under the moniker, Monica G. Crafted at night while all of them sleep. I won't look a fool, taking this tool. Defeating the opposition around me. No, I'm not sorry. Yes, I'm taking this knowledge and pride. Just fucking no harm, don't be startled. Yes, I'm taking the title, and it's so vital. Thanks for the ride, I'll never be idle. Turn up the dial, it's about to get wild. And the points gon' pile up.
Dynasty underdog bite down, up at the day and the night. Now, easy as flying a kite. Now, come take a look at it right now. Dynasty underdog bite down, up at the day and the night. Now, easy as flying a kite. Now, come take a look at it right now.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 156 of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Uriah Dawkins. With me tonight, Billy Beeman. What's up, man?
Not much, dude. As interesting as it can be, doing a solo pod, coming up with something actionable and, like I said, interesting. I'm glad to have you back, man. Glad to have you back for sure. It's crazy, man. It's a lot of work, but it was really fun doing that, and it was cool, kind of just going off of the Discord questions. We have some more today, but it's always cool trying to do something for somebody that they actually asked for because they want to know something, and it works for them. It's actionable for them. So
yeah, more personable and stuff like that, which is cool. Like the guys in the Discord always have really good questions, and a lot of those guys are really sharp. So it's always cool when stuff like that comes up. So
absolutely, it's crazy that we have to tell people to not sell Kyle Pitts now when we it's just so strange. But I also thought talking about Quentin Johnson was interesting.
I love that.
Well. Yeah. But actually, I wanted to get, before we hop into all the stuff we have today, I didn't get, anybody else's thoughts on kind of what I was talking about. And I think when you and I were texting back and forth, you brought up something I did want you to bring up again. But I mean, you can do that. And if you don't remember, I'll find it. But what did you think in general of kind of the actual content, not like how I did, because, I don't care about that.
No, you did great. The content was good. If this was something that we were doing together, I would have brought up the fact that I think if you look back at the 2022 season and Justin Herbert's average depth of target, it was pretty low. I think, lowest in his career. And I've had some people, I've seen people wonder, is this the new norm, or is this a reason to fade him or whatever? But what wasn't touched on in the pod last week was that his new offensive coordinator is Kellen Moore. And every year that Kellen Moore was offensive coordinator for Dallas Cowboys, the Cowboys offense was, basically the number one scoring offense in the league. And that absolutely has to do with Kellen Moore. As soon as we got Jason Garrett out of there and everything, it was a whole entirely new offense, way more powerful, way more downfield shots. And I think you're going to see that a lot here with Justin Herbert. So wheels up, Justin Herbert, Quentin Johnson, the whole Chargers team, in my opinion, having Kellen Moore run things there it's a good thing. It really is a good thing. He should still be in Dallas if it was up to me. So
yeah, I meant to find the ADOT numbers for Justin Herbert, because I'm absolutely positive they were down, but I'm not going to go on that hunt right now. Yeah, I think that was a great point. Like I said to you when you said that to me when we were going back and forth. Yeah, I wish I brought that up, but that's what I have you here for. And it's a great point. The offense is going to change. I think that some people, still kind of have a little bit of stigma when they think about what that offense looks like, especially from last year. But you got to remember, Herbert injured. There's just so many factors with that team that have completely changed going into this year. So, yeah, definitely good points.
Absolutely. All right, let's hop into some news and nonsense. So, is it Macintosh season? We have injuries and all reports are from the local beat writers that, he does look really, really good in camp. It's really good catching the ball. And I think they see him more as a special teams player. But given the injury, we have Charbonnet with the shoulder thing. I've seen it kind of being comp to what Dalvin Cook has dealt with his entire career. And then Kenneth Walker isn't practicing either. That one doesn't seem as serious, but they're both not practicing, and Macintosh is. So something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think Walker's is a groin, which you never know. Those things can linger, just like the shoulder thing that Charbonnet has. So I'm not like, I liked Kenny McIntosh enough. I thought he was fine coming out of college, a little bit smaller, but yeah, you see some of the film and he looks pretty jittery out there quick. I definitely snagged him up in a couple of leagues. Like, I think we need to see a little bit more, maybe hear more news. I mean, we heard Charbonnet's out indefinitely, quote unquote, but it's so early in the offseason that can change. So I think we need to hear just another bit of news for him to get that boost you need to be able to kind of sell him. But that's what you should be looking to do. He's not a guy who I would hope carves out some role. This team is Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Unless one of them breaks their leg or tears an ACL, it's them two. And I think that it's either them two or it's going to be one of them mainly, and maybe Kenny McIntosh works in there. I don't think he's a player you're going to want to be starting in your fantasy lineup almost ever.
I don't think so. I think best ball, if you're getting them late in best ball or something, you're probably happy with the reports, but these players still have quite a bit of time to get healthy, and there's probably just more being safe with them than it is serious, but we'll see. Yeah, McIntosh, I mean, maybe not the time that you're going to hear this, but he's probably was available in some of your waivers still. So at least I got him off waivers.
Yeah, definitely in leagues that aren't super sharp. He'll probably be there.
Okay. All right, next one, JT, Jonathan Taylor, beefing with Jim Irsay. So you've all heard it probably. I mean, not everyone who uses on Twitter follows everything all the time, but Jonathan Taylor, he had the meeting with the quote unquote top running backs on the league, trying to talk about running back pay, and Jim Irsay doing what he does, probably drunkenly. He had JT in for a meeting with him in his van, and they talked for about an hour, and then later on, JT said is requesting a trade. I know that JT has a new agent, and so maybe he's screwing things up, but for the time being, JT may or not even be playing for the Colts. Is there anybody in the backfield there that you're trying to pick up? And are you worried about JT playing this year?
I mean, it's probably too late to go get Evan Hull. That's really the only player I'm interested in that backfield. And I think that he could potentially have some full-time role of sorts in general. I think that he would play an elevated Nyheim Hines role. I've said this in the past before. I think he's an above average in between the tackles runner, and he's also a very good pass catcher. Showed both those things in college. So I like Evan Hull a lot. Always have. I think it's probably too late to get anybody there. I think Deion Jackson I saw off the waivers in a couple of leagues, but I'm really not excited about him. I'm excited about Evan Hull, if anything. And I'm not about in terms of Jonathan Taylor, being on the Colts, yeah, sure. There's definitely a concern. He might not be there just based on Jim Irsay being a maniac and everything we're hearing. He could be traded. Sure. But I just think that he is going to play this season, whether it's somewhere else or it's for the Colts. At some point he's playing this season. And even if not, he's young enough where he's going to play at some point. So just buy the value to hold on to him. It's going to be a ride, but I think I'm going after him, or maybe did I secure him? I think I secured him for a pretty cheap price in this auction league I'm in, the salary cap league I'm in. So yeah, I'm not shying away from Jonathan Taylor at all from that respect.
He's on one of my most competitive rosters, and I am a little worried, but I don't really know what to do. So,
I mean, I'd be worried that you're not going to get a full season out of him, just in terms of he, maybe he sits out a short time, but I really find it hard to believe that he's not going to play the entire season. And I guess I'm just willing to take the L on that if that is the case, because I think he's such a valuable long-term dynasty asset, or, when I say long-term, 2 to 3 year dynasty asset, I think that's what he is. So I kind of just would hold. I definitely wouldn't sell low, and I would buy the dip on the right team. If I had some extra assets, some room to grow, I wanted to consolidate. Excuse me. I wanted to consolidate. I would do that.
Absolutely. All right. Next one. OJ Howard is released. One of man, I'm shocked because he was such a great prospect coming out. I remember he got drafted in the first round. I think the same year that he and Njoku got drafted. And I just always really liked OJ Howard's game as a player. Not so much for fantasy, but I always thought like it could be there. So I guess does it make you more interested in Meyer now? I know you're a huge Meyer guy, anyways. It is.
Yeah, this is just Michael Mayer news to me. Is really what it is. I love the prospect coming out. I love the situation for him, especially if it's going to be Jimmy G for a year, kind of learning the ropes in that offense under McDaniels, under Josh McDaniels, where they kind of highlight that position. I personally, you could go and watch my film review on the DFF YouTube channel. I see him having the same skill set traits as a Mark Andrews type, right? Like I don't want to say that he's going to be Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce, but I see those traits before and after the catch. He's a really good blocker. He's going to be on the field all the time. I think, this is just kind of a sign that, we don't really need to take not the chance, but we don't need to go through the experiment of OJ Howard. We have a good enough young tight end here. We have Austin Hooper, a veteran, who those two guys will play. And, for me, it's just a good sign for Mayer. I was already buying him. I don't think this means all of a sudden he's going to get more playing time. Probably he's going to get the same amount of playing time as he would have got regardless. But I just, I like Mayer. I think this highlights that. And I want to be buying him up when everybody has their attention on Dalton Kincaid and Luke Musgrave and all these other guys. I kind of want to go after Mayer because for some reason people just hate this super productive, awesome tight end. I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Yeah. Well, maybe they like him a little bit more now. Sometimes you need news like this, to get everybody on board.
I don't know, man.
The sharp people, the better players, they get on board with this before the news, but it's hard to make that decision sometimes, to go in on a player when you're just worried about the people in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, I posted on Twitter essentially what I just said, that with everybody going after Kincaid, I'm going after Mayer, and there was plenty of responses like, yeah, you do that, and he's just going to be a blocking tight end and this, that, and the other. And I immediately went to look at what percentage the top 5 tight ends block at. And it ranges from Kelce at 26%. And then, I forgot who it was, another one of the top 5, whether it was Waller or Hawkinson or somebody at 30. And then Mark Andrews at 40. I mean, they block because they're good blockers. They're good players. They block a fairly, you're on mute. Yeah.
It's part of the job.
Is part of the job. And obviously Kelce blocks less because he's just an absolute phenom weapon in the passing game. But even Mark Andrews, who is similar to that, is on the field blocking a lot. Gronkowski, I didn't look it up, but I'm sure he was on the field blocking probably way more than that. But either way, if you're good enough, that stuff doesn't matter. And it just means you're going to be on the field all the time, which is what you want anyway. More opportunities to run a route, right? It may not always be. And obviously blocking means you're not running a route. But I think being on the field more often than not, if you're on there for audibles, all different kinds of plays, you have more opportunities to receive a target, to run a route. And I think that's the kind of player he is.
Yeah. And I think there's probably something there in the wash about how tight ends block, but we see it all the time. Tight ends block for 2-3 seconds and then they dip out, right? And so then they run a little route. So I don't know how they really count all that, but yeah, wheels up on Mayer. I like it. This next one's fun. George Pickens hype. If you are on Twitter, you've definitely seen this clip where he's going up against what's his name? It doesn't matter. Going up against a defensive back and just dusts him. He goes out there, shoves him.
Oh, it's Porter. It's Joey Porter Jr.
Porter, yeah, exactly. Yeah, JP, yeah. JPJ. And he goes up there, bodies the dude, goes up, grabs the ball, shouldn't have been even coming down with the catch. Comes down with the catch, and then he hands the ball to the defensive back, here you go, bud. And if you hear the quotes from him talking about how, he thinks that he's the best player on the field, and he needs to be out there every time he runs a route, he should be targeted, and if he's not, he's going to go out there and just do work. The hype is fun. I still don't really know about the player. Personally, I'm not, I don't think he's as good as he thinks he is, but it's fun at least. What's your takeaway?
Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting, right? You got all the people coming on Twitter looking at it and like, dude can't separate, right? He's obviously super talented. Like the guy can play football and he's going to score fantasy points here and there. But I think, it is an issue that he can't separate, that they run him on 9 routes mainly, that he's just not a very versatile player. And I think that's going to limit his upside in fantasy always. He could end games with 1 catch for 40 yards, and it could be a touchdown sometimes, but sometimes that's what you're going to get. So, doing this auction leagues in general are fun to look at because you really see kind of player values, and seeing George Pickens right now go for like, I don't know, $10 more than what Deontay Johnson's going for is absolutely wild to me. So all it means to me is just go and sell Pickens off of this hype. He was already valued highly, more highly than I valued him, per the market. So I think there's opportunity here to really get out from under him and get plus value, get a first plus a really good player or something like that. You could probably go get Marquise Brown in a first, like easy right now.
I like that a lot, actually.
All
right. What do you have here? Former first rounder CEH and Hayden Hurst.
I just think I thought this was interesting, something to kind of like that, I don't know, keep an eye on in the future, because I think these guys, especially this year, are completely forgotten, and nobody cares about Hayden Hurst, right? But I think he has a ton of opportunity ahead of him. You see, there's Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, everybody wants to fall in love with DJ Chark for the 15th year in a row. We'll see. But if you're being honest with yourself, I think that Hayden Hurst has been fairly productive enough to play in your fantasy lineups here and there. He was good with Joe Burrow last year. Good in Atlanta that 1 year. Obviously not the best, but former first rounder, high pedigree, keeps getting chances. And he's getting another one here to start for a team with a rookie quarterback who tend to lean on shorter area targets. So I think that Hayden Hurst could have a really solid year. I've said this before, but also CEH is a guy who's completely forgotten, former first round pick, who, again, I think this year could get some opportunity as the 1-2 punch guy. Obviously, it's going to be Pacheco. You hear all the stuff about Deneric Prince, and because of Pacheco, now every 7th rounder or undrafted free agent for them is going to be a guy. But I don't understand why we're forgetting that, CEH finally a healthy offseason, like coming in, maybe this is a guy who maybe he wasn't worth the first round pick, and that's not where he should have gone, but he was definitely a highly talented player. So I think, in Kansas City, a lot of opportunity there. I think that these are kind of like players that I personally want to hone in on. I've gotten some Hayden Hurst this offseason. I have some CH from last year. I think he's super cheap. You could probably get him for nothing right now. And I just think that pedigree continues to give them opportunities. So it's something that we should kind of hone in on. We forget about them, but they keep getting opportunities and they keep being semi-productive, but super cheap.
Yeah. The whole opportunity thing goes to what we talked about with how draft capital matters. These guys just will continue to get more chances unless they really stink. I mean, like Laquan Treadwell or something. But
I'm not sitting here hoping that like Hayden Hurst is now going to be a starting tight end for me for the future or CH. But as low as their value has gotten and the opportunities that they're getting, there's definitely return on investment there. You can use those assets in packages down the road. There's ways to use these assets more than just them being, point scorers on your team. I think you could see how cheap they are and kind of the upside there given what we're talking about here. So something to think about.
All right. You want to talk about this next one?
Yeah. This last one I just wanted to talk about a little bit because in doing, I've been talking about doing projections and building them out manually, and there's a lot of ways to do projections. You definitely can automate some of it. You can build formulas, to kind of calculate, the increase in pass plays each year, just all the different kind of things that are going to increase, decrease each year that impact target shares and all that different stuff. But when you go through it manually, really manually, and even when you do it that way, there's a lot of power in kind of actually building the projections. And I think it's really useful. You can get like spreadsheets that are pretty cheap out there. Like I think under $10 that like calculate everything. You just have to input the data, which is pretty solid. But the reason I think it's super helpful is because it forces you to go through a mental process of examining how these players are going to amass the points that you think they're going to score, right? Like how many or what percentage of the rushing attempts are the running backs going to get, or from really just the very basic part of how many plays is the team going to run on off, in terms of passing plays and in terms of running plays. And then that makes you think like, okay, what did they do last year? All right, the coaching staff, like, how's it going to change? Okay, can this really happen? Okay, like, can DJ Moore really get a 25% target share? And what does that even mean on this team if he does get a 25% target share? And it forces, but it forces, because like when you just look at projections, like you don't know how those were built. You don't know. Like it says they're going to score 5 touchdowns and they're going to get 1,200 yards. What does that mean to you? To me, it doesn't really mean anything when I look at them like that. But when I build them out myself, it really means a lot more to me. Because obviously there's a range of outcomes. Obviously, I'm not going to be right on point, but I'm trying to go by career averages. I'm trying to, adjust for the changes, the scheme changes and everything. But again, it forces you to look into those things and identify kind of the changes and learn from maybe some mistakes you're making, but also, make good judgment calls and build knowledge on that. So it's just, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of different nuance and detail, and you'll miss some of it. And again, you'll get stuff wrong. But it's helpful. It's all helpful in kind of building a knowledge base, especially for Dynasty. Like this stuff is super important. So you want to understand how these guys each year are going to score points. Because every time I do it, I find something out different. I'm like, this year was Miles Sanders. I was like, there's no way he doesn't just get a ton of volume. Like it's impossible for him not to get a ton of volume. You can't even break it down in a way where he doesn't. So it's like, even if you don't like him, it makes me adjust my from my priors,
Sure. Yeah. I think it's very useful too. You look at, projections and stuff, like you look at a team with, really popular Dynasty players, Kyle Pitts and Drake London.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, wow, 28% target share, 25% target share. This guy's going to ball out. Well, you look at that offense and the way Arthur Smith literally runs things. Even if you're getting that, not all target shares are equal, just based on the offenses. And so going through those projections really does matter. Like, yeah, I want my studs to have 25% target share or more, but I also want that to be on a team that's throwing the ball a whole lot more than a team like Atlanta does, and a team probably like Chicago will. So I get that. I've never really been able to sit down and do it manually. I've been able to cheat with our studios and run some projections, but maybe next year I'll actually get into it.
Yeah, and obviously doing it through our studios would help kind of quicken the process. But either way, doing it's just so helpful, and it forces you to be like, yeah, this guy's going to get X target share, and then you look at the rest of the team, and you're like, wait, I got to reduce that by a couple notches. Like it doesn't make sense, and so it's super helpful. As we move on here, I did get. Did I get the average depth of target? That doesn't make sense, does it? Oh, this is deep passes. Sorry.
It's all good.
Why is it only deep? I'm trying to get the average depth of target here. I'm on PFF. So frustrating. No, not deep. Okay. That doesn't make sense. Why would this be by depth? Like, all right, never mind. I thought that was an interesting conversation. Anyway, what you got here for us, Uriah?
Cleaning out my closet. So this is something I wanted to talk about last week. Wasn't able to be here last week, but yes, not the Eminem song "Clean Out My Closet," but more about a roster cut down discussion. Because this is the time of year where, if you want to be active on waivers and stuff, I think probably most dynasty leagues will have you have a valid roster. They'll expand them, right, for the rookie draft and those other things. But like typically, you have to be cut down to 25 players or 30 players or whatever it happens to be, 5 taxi. Whatever your league says, but you have to drop some players. And I always find it really hard to do that. I find it really easy to cut other people's rosters when they post them. I'm like, oh yeah, this guy. But when it's my own team, I'm always like, man, this guy's worth something. He's got to be worth something. I can't just drop him. So I thought it was kind of a difficult thing to do, and I don't think it's something that we really talk about very much or have talked about. So just some quick questions here that we could talk about. Like, when do you do it? So if
Okay,
your deadline is August 10th in 8 days, do you start doing it now or do you wait till the very last minute?
Yeah, I mean, just intuitively, you want to wait as long as possible, right? Like, if you don't need to make moves, don't do it. Like, I've seen a couple moves go down in leagues where high value players were dropped well before the deadline, and it got talked about in different chats and whatnot. And you're like, oh, probably could have just waited, and maybe I could have offered out, made some offers if because the thing is no matter what level of dynasty player you are, you may think a player is not valuable, but other players may think they're more valuable. So you should always shop players that you're willing to drop before you have to drop them. Especially if you want to get them off your roster ASAP, go to the league chat at the very least. Like everybody's about to see they were dropped. Go to the league chat and hit them up and say, hey, anybody interested in X player? Like I'm getting rid of them for sure. Willing to sell them for this. You know what I mean? Otherwise, just go into the market and boom, you got yourself a bunch of suitors there. Easy peasy. So I think that's how you got to approach that specifically.
And then I guess how to do it. Are you gonna say there's somebody on waivers and you need to okay, so you're 3 people over the limit and you have somebody on IR you got to move up. You're gonna drop all of them at the same time, or are you gonna slow trickle that sort of thing to kind of build up, or how do you go about it? You just grab your roster, select the 3 guys that you think are droppable, and just drop them. Am I making too big a deal out of this? What I mean, I feel like maybe I am.
No, I mean, there's always strategy to everything, especially if you know your league. Like it depends. It definitely depends. I mean, in this situation, I mean, if a lot of people value having roster spots instead of just clogging their roster. So if you're that kind of person, you can definitely maybe manage kind of the transactions that are going on by releasing a certain player and having that go, because when the deadline, you can release a player and have everybody go after it on the next waiver run before the deadline. And drop players, and you can pick up another player and use it that way. But I don't really see a lot of value in that. So for me, like I just generally I'll wait as long as I can, as long as I think is best, drop them all and call it a day. Make my waiver wire pickups. If the waiver run is kind of at the deadline or whatever, then I'll just use the waiver run to drop them at the same time.
All right. And you already touched on this one a little bit. Like, is there any roster prep before you do it? Meaning like, okay, so you're a couple players over the roster limit, right? And you want to get in there and do some waivers, things like that. Roster stuff that you normally wouldn't be allowed to do because you have an illegal or invalid roster. Are you going to take the time to go through your leagues and try to do some like 2-for-1 deals, 3-for-2 deals? That way you're gaining a roster spot, but you haven't really dropped anybody. Or is that just like too much work? Or is there value to that?
It's interesting. I listen to the Superflex Super Show, and I hear Tommy Blair on there now, and he talks. It's not just him. A lot of people talk about this, but he talks a lot about the value of roster spots, and I think this is a lot more valuable when you're heading into the rookie draft season because the waivers get kind of crazy. You have the ability to pick up more players than other people, so that's why the roster spots are valuable. But I typically don't have I guess I almost always have a couple players on my roster I'm willing to dump. So I never worry about like having those roster spots available. I can always send a player to the waivers for a guy that I really want. But I've never been a guy to actually kind of do the 2-for-1s right before deadlines in terms of roster cutting and stuff like that. But it may be a good idea just because other people may get in the trading mood because of those deadlines and stuff like that. And it may be just a good opportunity to kind of make those 2-for-1 deals that are, consolidating and you getting those better assets.
I always have this feeling where when I'll drop some players because you have to, right? And then the next waiver one of the guys I drop gets picked up and I'm always like, damn, like there was some missed opportunity that maybe the person that picked him up wouldn't have paid like anything for him, but since he was out there, I'll spend 10 fab or 20 fab on him. And you're just like, damn it, like you're like, man, I know I missed out on an opportunity to profit from this player somehow, or just a little bit. So I always feel like I'm doing it wrong, I guess.
Yeah, no, that one is big. I generally don't miss on those kind of things. And the effort thing, I've talked about this before. This is just an effort thing. Like
It is.
the amount of effort you put into your dynasty leagues is equal to the amount of success that you're going to have in even the short spurts, not just long term, but even in the short areas, just like waivers. And I just missed one too. Like we had Elijah Mitchell fall into the waivers in one of our DU leagues, and I didn't even get a waiver claim in on him.
I did too late.
That's just insane for me. Like that never happens. And I was actually that really hit me hard. And I was like, all right, I need to get back into like actually caring, like not actually caring, because I've been at it, but I just need to like, this is the time of year where there's certain things like this auction league I'm in, like dead ass, like I need to be up at like 2 a.m. to like make one little thing happen. And it's like, it's an effort thing. It's just an effort thing, man. You got to kind of be there. And for me, like all you have to do is when you see him drop, you just go and put a waiver claim. That's it immediately. It doesn't take more than 5 minutes, if that. So, yeah, man, it's me too. I like, it's off season and you kind of let things slip by, but it's an effort thing. That's all it is.
Yeah. You see that. And then like, you're like, yeah, I'll get around to doing that. And then like, you never do. And you realize you missed out. So.
That's exactly what happened to me. That was brutal.
And so the last one is, I mean, it's a perfect segue. So the importance of keeping track of who's been cut. You get those emails, so-and-so drop some players. Yeah. Like I'll admit for me, 80% of the time, I just I briefly look and I just delete the email. Because I just assume it's like a droppable player. But every once in a while you have like a Dalton Schultz that gets dropped. We had that a couple of years ago in Console Wars.
Yeah.
And, now it doesn't seem so crazy because Dalton Schultz isn't the hot ticket item that he was 2 years ago. Yeah. But then we had, Elijah Mitchell get dropped in a DU league. And it's like, oh man, like I probably should have kept note of that. And I think it'd be important, and it's really easy, that it's not even a ton of effort, but to actually just write down like who's been cut from your league. Because I mean, at any given time you have 11 people making these cuts, right? So it could be up to 30 players, 40 players that are getting cut, and 1 or 2 of them might be startable. So I think instead of just deleting that email because you're like, I don't care what he's doing with his team, it's not my problem. I think taking better notes of actually who got dropped, or like Billy said, put in a waiver claim for a guy that you see get dropped that you think will be useful on your team. I don't do that, and I need to start taking note of this.
I use sticky notes all the time, but like I've started using alerts like on my phone, like calendar alerts. Like you can put literally in your calendar, you can put a list of names that you want to put. Like there's so many easy ways to remind yourself to do this that make it simple on yourself. Like you really don't have to try as hard as most make it seem. It doesn't take as much time as most make it seem, unless you're one of those maniacs with 50 leagues. But at that point, like you know what you signed up for. So get in there and make all your claims. But yeah, I just think it's an effort thing. And honestly, with Dynasty, like you have to give it a really solid amount of effort, maximum effort, almost all the time. If you want to be successful, man, that's just how it is, in my opinion. I finally got the average depth of target for Justin Herbert. All right. I got it. 6.9, bottom of the league, 6.9 average depth of target. Just absolutely brutal.
I didn't want to say that in opening that it was the bottom of the league, because I didn't know that was true. I just had known that it was like way low compared to like seasons past. So, yeah, awesome. Yeah, that whole 6.9, that's going to go up with Kellen Moore. Absolutely.
Absolutely, like a ton. We're gonna see fireworks from that team this year. We got Joe here, Discord member, listener. One team's trash is another team's treasure. Love it.
Yeah, that's true.
With the waiver wire stuff, I love it. Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Absolutely, and just that feeling, I'm always like, damn, I could have got something for him, but it's hard, man. It's hard to stay on top of all this.
Big shout, Joe. Big shout. Love it.
Big shout.
All right.
Discord questions.
Speaking of Discord, we got some Discord questions.
Somebody had talked about how Jordan Addison is probably one of the least talked about wide receiver rookies right now, and man, I think that's true. For he was either the first or second typically wide receiver drafted in our rookie drafts, and there's just not like a ton of hype. There's a lot of JSN hype. There's a lot of Quentin Johnson hype. But yeah, not a lot of Addison hype.
No, not a lot. And I mean, you're not going to hear a ton of Jordan Addison hype coming from this show, I don't think. And that may be part of it too. This coming from our Discord, I don't know if you're super high on Jordan Addison. I mean, I know that you're more keen on Quentin Johnston and probably
Yes.
JSN, like I kind of have become. I definitely was always JSN, Team JSN for life, but Quentin Johnston definitely coming more around on, and Jordan Addison may kind of fall by the wayside, though he's in maybe a better situation than almost all of them. Though I think JSN could easily break through his situation. I think his situation is not as bad as people make it seem. I think he's really that good. So, in terms of Jordan Addison, playing next to Justin Jefferson with Kirk Cousins in an offense that is going to pass the ball a ton, being overlooked, I can get why the question comes up for sure.
Yeah.
He just looking back to college, let's, really quick, like he hasn't played down in the NFL yet. So in terms of, some of the stuff we look at, like college dominator rating, which is looking at their overall team production or production in terms in relation to the rest of their team, 29.9%, 54th percentile, not really great. College target share, 23.7%, 69th percentile, not fantastic. He does have an 18.6 breakout age, which is 95th percentile. Fantastic. That's what you want to see there. The athletic testing wasn't fantastic. I mean, the 40-yard dash is 70th percentile with a 4.49. I think everybody thought he was going to test a little bit faster than that. And the overall speed score is in the 19th percentile. Burst score, 27th. Just athletic testing really, really didn't pop. And I think that is also part of why he didn't really catch any steam, coming out of the combine going into the draft. And then just the last thing I'll say for me personally, sorry, I was just reading the comment here from Joe. I'll throw it on the screen in a second. But for me personally, I've always just been a little low on him from a film perspective, right? Like I just didn't really think that he matched up against man very well. Press coverage really, really bothered him a lot. And in the NFL, you're just going to get more of that and stronger guys. So he's really going to have to beat guys off the line with his release, which he has a good release and he's a really good route runner. So he's going to be successful in the league, I think, to an extent. But the reason why he's not getting the shine is because I think Zay Flowers, these other guys just have better, more high quality traits that translate to elite fantasy production. So, Quentin Johnston with Justin Herbert and just kind of, the downfield production that he can give you and JSN target monster. And I can come up with all different kind of narratives. So that's kind of, I think, why he's not being talked about as much and why I think we don't like him as much on this show. But what do you think?
I like him. I drafted Quentin Johnston over Jordan Addison. I had a choice of all the top three. Mm-hmm. And I was just a Quentin Johnston guy, mostly because our model, we did it as fairly and accurately as we can, as we know how right now. And, I had Quentin Johnston 1, but Jordan Addison's still 4th wide receiver in our model. College production is pretty decent. 26% target per route run. Receiving yards per team pass attempt, per team pass attempt is 2.3, which is pretty good. It's over 2, which is kind of what you want to see. But he's really small. Yards per route run, 2.6. Adjusted team, teams, adjusted yards per team attempt. Sometimes these like acronyms you gotta like really drill into yourself.
There's too many of them, man.
And we need to do another show where we talk about like these stupid little like sayings that we have and what they actually mean. Some of it's more what's the word? Some of it's not predictable. Some of it just mumbo jumbo. But basically, with all his peripherals, when it comes to quote unquote analytics side of things, like I like the player, but I mean he's playing against a beast on the other side, and that team is just not one that gets like a ton of hype in the first place. Like it's the Minnesota Vikings, it's Kirk Cousins, and this guy's 170 pounds. So yeah, you would like to see more hype from a first round NFL wide receiver and first round rookie pick than we're seeing from Jordan Addison, but I'm not really that worried about him. I think he's going to find a role there. I think maybe if you're in on Jordan Addison, maybe it's a good thing there's not a lot of hype right now.
Yeah, I think Jordan Addison can definitely have a long successful career and be a good fantasy producer too. I just think a lot of these other guys have a little higher ceiling than him, and there's other NFL players I would rather have, given Jordan Addison's current value in Dynasty. Joe here coming in again hot with the comments you have up on the screen here. Dynasty value wise, kind of worried about Addison's decision making after the speeding incident. I mean, I guess it's fair for sure. Obviously, some people are going to feel that way. I think it said that he had there was an issue with his dog or something. He was rushing his dog to the vet, or it was something like that in the end. So again, I'm not saying it right or wrong, he could have hurt somebody. There's a lot of nuance to that stuff. So yeah, definitely decision making is concerning. We talked about that, I think, the week that this news came out, but I don't know. It's hard to judge everybody for potentially their worst decision. You know what I mean? If it becomes a trend, that's one thing. So I'm gonna hold off judgment on the man right now and see what happens going forward.
Yeah, and you got to remember he's not really quite a man yet. He's fresh out of college, pocket full of cash. So hopefully we don't hear anything else like that about him. So, but I do like the player. I'm not super high on him. We don't talk about him a lot. But I do like the player.
He's fine.
He's fine. General win now philosophy. Break it down or go all in.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit recently as well. You and I both have a very similar mindset on this. The goal is to win championships, and when you're that close and you just had one or you're just in one, unless your team is absolutely dying, not going to even score points this year, they're all James Conner-esques, potentially, he could be good, but potentially just flame out. If it's Derrick Henry's and Aaron Rodgers and, these guys who have some steam left in them but are older, those teams I don't really want to break down. I want to go all in. I want to get the final piece or an extra piece that has some youth to them still, and I can kind of really go for it. I prefer not to just break it all down right there. I'd rather do it, off of, I try to gauge it, do it off of the last one where my team is absolutely dying. And yeah, then you kind of got to just break it all down because you really don't know when you're going to get back there. It's so hard to get there.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned James Conner, we could throw in Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers, those guys, people that were rocking Brady the years before,
yeah.
You just got to go for it. I mean, if you were in a position where you won last year, maybe you won the year before, but to have that kind of team, your team is getting older. That's just the way it's going to be. I think I can't speak on just breaking it down. I haven't had to do that yet. So I feel if your team is competing and nothing really serious has changed, you got to go for it again. Just go for it again. And then, look at your team again, week 8, week 9, week 10. And then you'll know. That's when you need to start breaking it down. August isn't the time.
I will say, I want to avoid getting to that point ever, right? And and that doesn't mean I don't want to have win now teams. That means my console wars team, right? And not all my teams are like that because it's not easy to kind of get into that churning flow where you can kind of really just continue to be competitive and move on from older players and get very valuable players who are young. And, plus on top of that, which is the goal, right? When you're getting out of a Devonta Adams, we're going to talk about some deals here in that league. When you're getting out of Devonta Adams, you want a player with similar potential upside plus, right? Always. And that's the best way, I think. Get out on it early, do it kind of, look at your team and say, okay, what are the players that I need to get out now? And are there players I need to get out in a couple of years? And you can kind of pace it out where it's okay, I need to get out from Devonta Adams and one other guy this year. Okay, let me do it, churn it that way and keep it moving. That's the way I would prefer to do it and keep a competitive roster and never get into that situation where I have to break it down, because when you break it down, unless you're getting the whole first round of the next year's picks, it's so hard to rebuild that way. In my opinion, it's so hard to rebuild that way unless you have an insanely active league and you're just a wizard, and you're, you can just swindle everybody, and
Like
it's
Billy.
not that easy. I mean, I make some really good deals, I think, but even if my team was in that bad of a situation, I have teams that are tough to get out from under, like in terms of, mistakes I've made. Like it's not that easy. People catch on to kind of what you're doing. And you have to be a little more, you just have to be a little sneakier. You have to be a little more clever with it. Right. And so it gets tough.
Cool. Last Discord question. This one's kind of cheeky and interesting. It says, does Jim Irsay decrease dynasty value because he's unpredictable and crazy, like Jonathan Taylor? I don't think that, a GM or whatever really will affect owner. Yeah, sorry. Affect how I view players. It's more about who's coaching, their track record as a coach, how they like to use certain positions, and how I'll value those certain positions. I mean, we've seen terrible ownership, terrible GMs, even terrible coaches, and they still produce. They still have good players on the roster, so good players are still going to be pretty good. Jim Irsay being the owner of the Colts isn't going to shy me away from any stud player that's on that team, personally.
Yeah, this is one of those things I think you use against your opponents, right? This is one of those things where it's like you don't want to let bias seep into your rankings, your evaluations, but it does to others, so you want to use those biases against them in terms of, market value versus your values, like we've talked about. This is one of those where it's like, look, if somebody's going to downgrade JT and Anthony Richardson because they think Jim Irsay is a maniac, which he absolutely is, 100%. Then I'm gonna buy up some Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, and Michael Pittman and whoever else. So yeah, I do think that it can do that. Like, people really, like, the way they feel about a figure in an organization, especially one that runs it, can impact their feelings, because people don't, they don't like people. People like to, people like drama, and they like that stuff, and they like to hate somebody. And it's kind of like the fandom thing. It drives you when you're a fan of one team to hate another, and all those kind of things. So I think this stuff totally can seep into people's dynasty values. It's not going to do it to mine, not going to seep into mine, but definitely something to kind of keep a pin on. And if you know your league, and you have a Colts fan who just can't stand this and is like, I just want to get out, JT's gone. Like, no, like, dude, absolutely, like, capitalize on that. You got to. Yeah. We got another one here. Comment: rebuilding definitely is a lot of work, but it can be a fun process experience if you're limiting yourself to one or two at a time. Yeah, sure. I think rebuilding is definitely can be fun. I love the process of churn. I like the process of kind of like trying to figure out how to take this competitive team and transform it, because there's players who I think like are going to die off soon, and transform it into similar players, but who have more longevity, which is a similar kind of thing to rebuilding. I enjoy that, but I like to be competitive at the same time. But I do understand like we've had some really cool teams in Dynasty Underdog listener leagues. Joe may be one of them who's done this. That
he's going to be.
Yeah, or in DU3 maybe he's doing a similar thing to what Dylan did in DU1 and potentially DU2, but which is tank year one and really build like just this phenomenal roster from a ton of first round picks. And Dylan has kind of sold some of those off, picked like the really high value guys. And he's done a good job. And I think that can be a ton of fun.
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with, what you're talking about with more like retooling or re-upping your already good league. Yeah, the offer I sent was yuck. Come on, Joe. Oh, I forget. I'll have to look at what it was. It was like Aaron Jones, and let me finish my thought. But yeah, no, I mean, I think what you want to do. Look at Joe. Who let them have comments? No, but yeah, you don't ever want to get to a point where you have to rebuild, right? Like you're literally stuck with these guys that like you're not going to get anything for. And we talked about that before. Like when is the time to get out on an old player? It's like when they still have some value to some other team. Because you have 11 other teams in your league, and everybody's going different ways. So there's always going to be get out on a player before he's no longer useful to anyone, right? So
here's your trash offer.
Oh, there we go. Awesome. Thanks. Gainwell and Gordon for 25 second and 20 and a 25 third.
You mean the Baltimore Ravens starting running back, Melvin
Yeah.
Gordon?
Okay. Like I want, like awesome. I want absolutely nothing to do with Gordon. I kind of like Gainwell.
He's fishing for those seconds, like you said, bro. This is the
Oh
time
no,
of year to
I
go snag
love
those
this
seconds.
trade for him.
Great trade for you, brother.
Yeah, I don't love it for me. I will never, I don't think, probably ever trade away my picks from 2 years out. I haven't yet to this day in any of my leagues, and I don't think I ever will.
Yeah.
So when I saw my 25 picks, there's nothing there. There's nothing there for me.
I've definitely traded a 25 before,
Yeah,
but the 25 first I've traded, but it's usually for like high end players. Like,
yeah,
I think I might have traded Allen Robinson in the 25 first for Keenan Allen a couple of years back, and that worked out fine.
sure.
I mean, Keenan Allen's been great. And I won the championship in the league, so yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Melvin Gordon, I don't know. Keep sending offers though. I love it. Yeah.
Oh, you had Swift and Dobbins, so he was fishing for your second the security. That's what it was. Got it.
I get it. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna finish it off here with some dynasty trades. I got 2 done in the league we talk about all the time, Console Wars, which is a 36 team 3-copy league. And again, I think the best way to view it is just a 12 team super flex tight end premium league, because the 3 divisions that are the 3 divisions the 36 teams are split in serve as essentially 12 team leagues throughout the entire year, and then they have an all playoff is really how it works. So values don't change too much. They're just it's kind of a little bit more active because you can trade a little bit more with all the assets going on. So in this league, I've won it before, but again, being 36 teams, it's very difficult to win. And I saw some of the assets on my team aging out, and I'm just trying to get out from them for as much value as possible. Like we've kind of been talking about, see if I can kind of swing one of those deals. So I was moving on from Devonta Adams here. I think he could still have a very productive year, but I also think that he could have a down year, and he's 31 and it could go south soon. So I'm really warming up to Quentin Johnston. I like what he's doing with Justin Jefferson. I think all the nonsense
Herbert.
about Herbert. Thank you. All the nonsense about the hand stuff is just trivial. It happens in camp every year, and if that's going to be the downfall, then I guess I'll take the L because of the hands. But he looks like a dynamic player with a dynamic quarterback and a dynamic offensive coordinator. Yes. I love it all. So I traded Devonta Adams for Quentin Johnston in 2024 second. How do you feel about that?
Love it. These are the type of moves that keep you competitive and not old. Like you just keep I love this trade. I absolutely love this trade. I mean, to get the second, I'm surprised that you're able to get a second on top of QJ, especially with all the hype and stuff going on right now for an old dude like Devonta Adams. I wouldn't give up Quentin Johnston in a second for Devonta Adams.
Really?
No.
Would you do it straight up?
No, I want QJ.
Straight up?
Yeah, I do.
You're not the first person that said that to me. That's insane.
I mean, there are people who are high on QJ, and then there's me. I think he's going to be an absolute baller. There's nothing about anything I've seen on film or anything in the analytics and the sheets that says he's not going to be a beast. I love the pairing with a really good quarterback who had a down year last year, a really good offensive coordinator. I wouldn't do that. And that's how you know that values are different for different people. We've talked about how do you value players? For me, I'm going to value Quentin Johnston higher than any trade calculator or any ranking that you'll probably see out there. I am really, really high on him. So this particular trade, I think you smashed.
Yeah, and this is where you can do that, lose a trade now, win in 6 months, extract value because of your values compared to market value, right? Like you're saying. I think this is one of those ways to do that. And in terms of Quentin Johnston, he's not perfect for sure. I had some concerns on film, nothing super glaring, but I think he had a limited route tree. He could refine his route running in general. And there's just the nuance, the deceptiveness, those kind of things within the route kind of before the catch. I want to see more of that because he's such a physical phenom that if he adds that to his game,
any kind of finesse,
he's going to be nearly unstoppable. So it's, you really hope working with Keenan Allen in this receiving core and with Justin Jefferson and Kellen Moore can all kind of come together for him. And you're obviously doing, what did I say?
Justin Jefferson.
Why do I keep saying Justin Jefferson?
I don't know.
I have Justin Jefferson on my mind. You know why? Dylan keeps trying to trade for Justin Jefferson, and I'm not having it. I'm not having it, Dylan. That's what it is. No, yeah, I just think with the whole combination, the whole situation, he could bust, but I like this trade, and I think he's going to work out. So,
me too.
Okay, next one was DK Metcalf plus a 2024 third for Jackson Smith and Jigba. So a Seattle swap here. I will say I tried to do DK for JSN and a second. And the kickback to me was actually JSN for Metcalf in a second, like just straight flipped around. And I was like I really don't think the value's like that. Like he like JSN's an unproven asset still, as much as like I love him and he should be great. I don't think he's worth giving up extra value on top of a proven asset like DK Metcalf. So, or like that much as far as a second. So I was like, look, I can give up a third because it's a third. What are we doing here? So sent over the third. Feel like I essentially swapped DK for JSN. How do you feel about that?
Yes, it's interesting. It's a good trade. It's kind of like how I thought you might have to maybe add a little something on top of Devontae for QJ. The fact that you had to add a little bit on top of Metcalf for Jason just kind of lets you know that whoever you're trading with really values youth. Jason's going to be a stud. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this year. I really do think that there's going to be quote unquote like buy low opportunity for JSN because I believe Pete Carroll's going to roll with Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, as the primary wide receivers out there like all the time. Rightfully so, right? I mean, what have they done to not deserve it, right? So I think that JSN's going to get his chance next year. I don't think he overpaid. I think you're going to end up with the more dynamic, higher fantasy scoring player on the Seattle Seahawks team for 2024. And all it cost you was an extra third.
Yeah, and that's a fair take. And obviously, if you think that, then you think longer term, obviously, as well. JSN will be the more valuable asset over DK. So that's part of so. Right. That's part of kind of the plan, the projection. I like as much as I think Tyler Lockett's incredible. I think he's going to play very well this year. I think JSN's such a good player that he's going to force himself onto the field, almost force them to either run more 3 wide receiver sets because he's just that good in producing, or he's just going to push Tyler Lockett to the side. And as good as Tyler Lockett's been, I think JSN is more versatile. I think he's more dynamic. I also believe he can play on the outside, though Tyler Lockett has proven time and time again he can play on the outside. So this isn't I can't stand Tyler Lockett. This is, I think JSN's that good. So
I like it.
Yeah, I think that he can push for the number 2 wide receiver role in this team easily, and at the very least, I think he's going to force them to play more sets that allow them to utilize formations. Sorry, to use more formations that allow them to utilize JSN more often.
Yeah, and that that's what you think. Then this trade is really it's a good trade either way. But yeah, I see what you're going. I see what you're doing with. I think you are probably a little bit higher on JSN's 23 season than I am, but I think we're both high on him. And I love it. This is another way to get rid of. Even DK's not old, right? But he will be before you know it. Blink, wake up, whatever, and then all of a sudden he's 29. So, it's another way to turn your roster. I like it for you.
Yeah, this team has also enough veteran type wide receivers that I think it can withstand even half a year of JSN and Quentin Johnson kind of figuring it out and pushing some of the players aside that are currently ahead of them on the roster. So that's the idea. That's the idea, at least. Okay. Last one here. This is one that I kind of heard about, thought it was interesting, didn't go through, but I know the side that received it was interested. Just, not quite there for whatever reason. Devonta Adams plus a 2025 first, another Devonta Adams trade offer. Devonta Adams plus a 2025 first for Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is a tight one. Devonta Adams still really good. If you're competing, this is a tempting offer, man, because you could definitely get the kind of points that you're looking for out of Amon-Ra St. Brown from Devonta Adams this year, and you also get a 2025 first on top of it. So it's enticing depending on your team build and where you're at. But I think I still lean on Amon-Ra St. Brown. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, slight lean for Amon-Ra, considering Devontae's age, the team, the quarterback, and everything else. Like, I don't think Devonta Adams has like a future after 23 that's really productive. It just is what it is. But if you're banking on Devonta Adams scoring Devonta Adams types points this year and knowing he's going to die off, getting that 25 first back is like pretty good consolation.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's a fair trade, but I could see why this wouldn't get done for the player who does have Amon-Ra. Like, dude gets like 150 targets. Like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, Amon-Ra probably outscores Devonta Adams this year.
Yeah. It's hard to, like, somebody would probably have to overpay to grab Amon-Ra off of me. Even with that offer, like, it's a good offer, but there's just so much more longevity and potential value gain on Amon-Ra's side. I think I'd at least need another second and in 24 for sure, but potentially another first. And like, then it's like, yeah, all right, I got to just kind of give it up at that point. But I really like Amon-Ra. So it's a tough trade. I wonder if valuation.
That was a 24 first instead of a 25 first, if that would make any difference.
I mean, definitely would make
it would for me. It would for me, right? So
yeah,
I think if I had Amon-Ra and I was getting the first back for next year, say, you know, my team didn't quite do it this year, Devonta Adams didn't do what I was hoping that, you know, 90% of what Amon-Ra is going to do for me, and maybe my team could still make it, you know, at least the very next rookie draft, I'm there, you know, adding to my pile here. But having to wait 2 years for that first, I don't know.
It's tough. That's tough.
It is tough.
The other thing is like, don't you think that there's potential to get this exact trade done in the middle of the year? Like, unless one of the players is just absolutely terrible, which is probably unlikely. If you're like, yeah, Amon-Ra's really good, but I don't think he's like gonna be that great, or, you know, he's not gonna see that level of targets consistently that we thought because of the new added weapons and yada yada yada, then, you know, if your trade partner still sees the value, you can still get that first 2 years out in Devonta Adams and kind of flip it. I think there's still potential. I don't think Amon-Ra is going to lose all of this value if he just has a couple down games or something like that. You know, you judge it how you want, but I think there's going to still be opportunity. This is one of those that you don't have to do right now and kind of be kicking yourself down the road if Amon-Ra is just an absolute beast all year, you know, which he should be.
Yeah, or you know, maybe there's the wait and see approach to see what Devonta Adams does this year, and say you're 3-4 weeks in and like, oh, he's pretty much the same guy. I feel more comfortable now that to make this trade, maybe the guy who has Amon-Ra could send that back over. Hey, yeah, maybe I will take Devonta Adams in that first off your hands. Here's a younger player that they're doing similarly, you know, a quarter of the year throughout the year or throughout the season. So this is something that I think you should probably wait on, and it could get done. Like, I just don't think it's that far apart.
Yep, totally. Love it.
Cool. Anything else you want to talk about?
Nah, man. Everybody hop in the Discord. Go check out the DFF YouTube page. Check out all the videos there. Paul is killing it. Paul Patterson.
He's good.
We've had him on the show. He's running the Factory Tour podcast, which new episode coming out in a couple of days here. He's doing so much stuff on the YouTube channel. So go check that out. Videos are actually killing it, and they're really good. But yeah, check us out. Check more of us out. Hop into our Discord and chat with us, man. We love having more of you there.
Cool. Give us a follow on Twitter at Dynasty Underdog, at Uriah Dawkins, at Willie Bean and DFF. And yeah, listen to us on Spotify if you can.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Have a good night.
Take it easy, man. Yep.
Later.